Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri Cardula, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri. Welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and business. And I am super delighted to have our guest today on the show. Valerie Recore is a productivity coach, a time giver, and a decision maker. She works with overwhelmed and overcommitted women. She's been there. She gets it. She has 2 young children, a husband, her own business, and occasionally a social life. I love it. She too has felt like has too much on her plate. With a background in mental health and corporate training, she's ready to guide you toward a better relationship with time. I think we all need that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah. So for those that do not know you quite yet and don't know the yumminess that you have, share just a little bit about you and how you got to be where you're at today.
Sure. So as you said in the intro, I have a background in mental health and corporate training, and I have worked across a variety of platforms and ways and with different groups of people in those capacities. And I think they have come together very well to help me in my current business as a productivity coach. I started out before the productivity piece as a professional organizer, so helping organize people's stuff in their homes, and much more interested and passionate about organizing people's time, because I've spent years just listening to friends and clients talk about how busy they are and me wondering what the heck does that even mean. And then I attended a workshop a couple years ago called Busy is Not a Badge of Honor. And I thought it was brilliant because we talk about it like it is.
Yeah.
But I don't even know what that means. When somebody says they're busy, I don't even know what exactly that means. I don't know how to describe that. And so my focus is really on helping people organize their time and as you said, change their relationship with time, because I think we all struggle with it at various points in our life.
Yeah. Well, I love this and I love this topic. And I'm going to go back to what you just said is about that busy. I'll be totally transparent. Like I used to say that all the time. And when people would say, how's it going? Oh, it's great. It's busy. I'm really busy. And I found myself, this is so interesting because I found myself creating this busyness. And like you said, like, what is this? Right. And so I was always quote busy. And I bought this kind of like this lie, if you will, for me, it was a big giant lie because yes, I was busy. However, I had a lot of time because I was being really efficient with my time. And so I stopped saying that. Like, I don't know how many years ago that was, but I stopped saying the word busy. And I just said, it's a cuss word now for me. So it goes into the can't camp and it goes into the busy camp. Those are words I'm just choosing not to use. Right. I usually will say like, I'm unbelievable. Right. Like, cause it's a different, but it feels different. Right. Great. Besides saying I'm busy. And for me, that word kind of weighs me down and and instead of being expansive, right. Like I can be, there's a lot of exciting things happening, right? So, but it's a mind shift, I think, too.
It's such a mind shift. And I think there's several pieces in there. One is just, you can be knocking all sorts of things off your to-do list and you're busy and your kids are doing all these activities and you are, but are you really living intentionally? Are the choices you're making every day getting you towards whatever bigger goals you have? And are you even taking time to know what those goals are? Or are you just knocking things off your list?
And is it making sense which ones to knock off, right? Because I will admit that, and my husband and daughter are now cued into this. And so we have like I love shiny, sparkly things in life, like in like stuff. Like I just love, I get drawn to it, but I also like just in like exciting opportunities. So this shiny, sparkly stuff for me can be also like opportunities. Like, oh, and I get excited, right? So I have to consciously say yes to what means yes and no to what means no. But
Mhm.
but I feel like it's really hard because it's as an entrepreneur too. I came from a background of nonprofit. And so when I got into the entrepreneur world, there was such a cultural shift. It was yummy. However, I feel like as an entrepreneur, there's so many things that we can reach out at and say yes to, and it can derail us. So,
Mhm.
I mean, how do you help people when they are just like, there's so much yumminess that's coming to them, and you're like, okay, you've got to stay focused
Right.
and be intentional with where you're going. How do you help
Yeah, with that overwhelm. And that's such
Yeah.
a great question. And I get it too sometimes. I have times where I'm just like, ooh, this next big shiny object. This looks really fun.
Yes.
Okay, stop. I'm still working on getting to this other goal. When I reach that goal, then I can move on. So then I'll just write it down on my like dream list for my business.
Brilliant.
Like we'll look at
Yes.
that next quarter or whenever that time might be right. So I think it's really being intentional about what it is you want your business or your career or your job, whatever you want, whatever label you want to give that, being very clear and intentional about what your goals are for the calendar year, breaking it down to the quarter, and then knowing what that looks like and focusing on that. And if some other big shiny object appears,
Yes.
making that choice of, is this more important? Is this going to have a bigger impact on your life? If yes, then maybe you shift to focus on that.
Yeah.
If not, it can go on the to do as a goal someday pile. You
Yeah.
come up with a shorter title for that list, but it can be just something you want to think about, but it's not time yet to get into that.
Yeah. I incorporate a lot of like muscle testing or kinesiology to make helping make choices, right? Because I think there's a lot of things that, if we get sidetracked by all this amazing things, we get distracted from where we're heading, and it can take us longer to get where we're going, right? And so
Mhm.
having some sort of a system and process, like you're saying, like always prioritizing which makes more sense for your business. And when we look at businesses, we often will I at least put a priority on those money generating activities
Absolutely.
over like the little dilly dally stuff, right? Because I mean, we can get sidetracked, and sometimes those like I call them the little they're my projects, but I always have projects going, right? Like I always have these, they're not necessarily money generating, activities
Sure.
either. So how do you help people maybe prioritize those? Like, do you have a system or an idea of how to help them prioritize between this versus that
hmm
if they're not using,
So
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, so it'll depend on the person, but it
Mm,
will be kind of like you said, it was something money making, or is there something that's moving your business forward to where you really
mm-mm.
want it to be? Then we
Yeah,
should focus on that.
yeah,
Well, also on occasion, putting time aside to do things like process your emails, clean out your files,
yeah,
review your to-do lists, and make sure that you're not missing anything big. And I think you kind of make room for both. So like I save my Fridays for, it's like my catch-up day. I
I
try to
love it.
get my calendars blocked off. Nobody can schedule time with me. I can schedule time with other people if that makes sense, but I'm making that choice.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm
I
honored that you're hopping on here on a Friday.
and I, well, it was important to me to
Yeah,
be here
right?
with you. And so
Yeah.
but I save it, Mike, I will process my emails throughout the week, but Friday is really when I'm digging into them and going through
Yeah.
them. Maybe when I sit down I'm a Post-it note fan. And so I collect lots of Post-it notes throughout the week, and I might sit down and process those.
Yeah.
You have to make time for both, because most of
Mhm.
this week I've been focusing on bigger projects and other things for my business. And so today is let's catch up on all the other nitty gritty that you need to
Yeah.
do.
I think that's a brilliant tip is to really carve out a time or a day of just like tying up the loose ends. And a Friday is a perfect day to really go into the weekend with kind of, almost like a complete, like a feeling like complete, right? And so
Mhm.
that you don't have these things that are looming on, because I think sometimes when we
Mhm.
are in that state of overwhelm, that we tend to perseverate on all the things that we don't have done, the things that we have to still
Right.
do. So if you can give it a little bit of a bow for the weekend and then really, fill yourself back up on the
Mhm.
weekend, or and I should say, for me, you find things that you can fill up, every day, right?
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah. And I think part of that overwhelm, when we're feeling overwhelmed by all of those things coming at us, the big projects, the to-dos, we don't take time to plan. And I think when we sit down with our multiple to-do lists and our flagged emails and post-it notes and plan the next couple of weeks,
yeah,
that we get less overwhelmed because we
yeah,
know that the things that need to happen are happening. We know they're documented, they're not floating around in our head anymore.
yeah,
They are moving forward, and we can make time for that. We know, okay, I have this podcast I'm recording in a week. I'm going to sit down today and kind of think about some things and stories related to that, instead of waking up the day of and like panicking and going, oh, I'm not ready for this. Like,
yeah.
we know it's coming down the pipeline, and that overwhelm can then take a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things are being taken care of.
I that is brilliant, because I think sometimes we just get into that zone of just on that autopilot versus really being intentional with planning it out, right?
Mhm.
When I created the daily intentions planner, that was intentional. It's like I'm
Mhm.
going to be intentional, so at the end of the day, I can plan it the next day, and so it's my brain's already like on board with creating, what it is that we're, facilitating. And it becomes easier when we have a plan of action. It's
Mhm.
easier for the brain.
Mhm.
It's easier for our, how are we going to show up? How are we going to handle the day? And it's such a game changer when
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
have taken that time to, give ourselves more freedom in that way.
Yeah.
Um, I just was going to ask you a question. I totally spaced it. This is what I wanted to ask you, because on the backdrop of, you know this conversation is COVID, right? We have COVID going on, and interesting enough, by the time this drops, we will probably have been online learning, because I know that that's coming down the pipe for us in a
Mhm.
in a couple
Mhm.
weeks. So, okay, this is for me too. Okay, to hear this advice, is how do women entrepreneurs that have school age children, and it's really, I would say, probably children under the age of junior high and younger, because high schoolers, I feel like, are fairly, in a different realm. Their
Mhm.
needs for the parent is different, right? It's
Mhm.
not that say that they don't need it, but it's different. What would you say for entrepreneurs that have school age children that are on the backdrop of what we're going through, and now we are going to be going back to online?
Mhm.
So not our first rodeo, but our second rodeo, and still. Um, like, give us some pointers or some suggestions on how to, and here's the thing. I know that your children are online, or virtual,
Yeah.
as a personal choice, right? And so
Mhm.
not only are you choosing, to have this, but I feel like probably by now you've probably mastered this. Right?
Like
So
to proud of.
you've had more time in the seat, right? So how can you share some tips or tricks or strategies for the listeners that says, okay, how do we keep from, you know, um, taking over that complete overwhelm with
Overwhelm.
this, plus it's an added, responsibility of just being a parent.
Yeah. So many things, and I feel so passionate about this topic, partly because I've been living it for quite some time. One, we call it remote learning, not homeschooling. There's a massive difference between the
Yeah.
two. We can call it crisis learning, which
I
I
think
think
it's
is what
crisis learning. Yeah, I
we were
do.
doing in
I
the
agree with
spring.
you. It's like,
Um, and so several things. One, the first and most important thing for me is giving ourselves so much grace. Like,
yes.
we are going to suck at this sometimes, and that is okay.
Yes. Way to
We're
go, parents.
Yeah,
Like,
and you
I
know
just
what?
keep telling parents, like, kids are really resistant. I mean, really, not
They're
resistant,
so resilient.
resilient. Like, the word is resilient. Kids are really
Sometimes it
resilient. Okay. So,
feels like they're resistant, but yes.
yes. Yes. So really resilient. And so I just keep saying, my daughter is resilient. I have laid a foundation for her. And so now we just are going to kind of like just
We're
ride
gonna,
this through.
yes, we are gonna be fine.
Yeah.
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 Kids are resilient. And I think we need to give ourselves so much grace that some days we're all just going to cry all day. But if everybody is fed and loved at the end of the day, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to start
Yeah.
over tomorrow.
Oh, that just gives me a little chills. Just be like, like when you boil it down to that simplicity of like, if they are fed and their basic needs are taken care of and they feel loved, oh, right? Like we've done our job for the
That's
day.
all we need. Right.
Yes.
And that might mean there's so many things. So for me, it's a lot of knowing what I'm doing every day. What are my priorities and my big things for my business? And they're going to be really small and very doable because I'm not going to have 8 hours or 6 hours to do them today. And I'm going to be interrupted a lot.
Yeah.
If you have a partner or a neighbor or somebody that you can trade off with. So my husband and I are very much like, I need this time for these meetings. Can you take over? And I get that that's not true in every household, that sometimes there are single parents or you work outside of the home or whatever that looks like. But so we have lots of grace for ourselves and for our kids and reminding ourselves that we are not their teachers. We are not.
Yeah.
I have a kindergartner and we have had more meltdowns over sight words in the last few weeks to where I'm just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
We need to step back from this.
Yeah.
She will learn to read someday. It doesn't have to happen right now. And I think we put so much pressure on ourselves that kids have to know all this stuff and they're going to be so behind. But we as a society have made up those rules as to what they need to know.
Yeah.
I think we can change them.
Yeah. In other countries, it's a very, learning sight words is a very different thing in other countries. Right. So, so yeah, I agree. We do put some, added pressure on ourselves, and you're right. Like the fact is that we are not teachers. I personally made a choice when I was going in to get my undergrad and my master's level degree. I made a choice not to become a teacher because I knew that was not in my repertoire. Like right, that was not my skill set. And so now we're being forced to be a teacher. And like giving ourselves grace that this is not necessarily our calling. And even the teachers did not choose to be also a parent and a teacher for their kids, plus a teacher for their classroom. And like I have such profound gratitude for teachers and the education system right now, and for parents, right? Like I'm just saying, we see you, we thank you. If you're listening, just thank you, right? Just hanging in there. And I just truly believe, and I've always said this, that teachers should be one of the highest paid professions that we have. Because the amount I used to volunteer an hour a week in my daughter's classroom, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness I wasn't I just so much gratitude for parents and teachers right now at this time. So I do feel like we get more than a t-shirt that says we've survived COVID, but we should get like some sort of a trophy or something. I don't know.
I've always had a huge respect for teachers. I come from a family of educators, but I think this year they are going above and beyond. And
oh gosh, yes,
enough. And
it just
but I think as parents we put so much pressure on ourselves. Like we should be functioning as amazingly as we were pre-COVID. And we just can't. And we need to give ourselves that grace and be okay with where we are right now.
And I think, as you said, like if we have a plan of action and we have a kid's plan of action, right? So before I always, when my daughter is home, I'm like, okay. And I literally write out on a piece of paper in like these, pretty big size letters. I'm like, okay. And these are like check boxes that I don't know what, I'm obsessed with these little check boxes. So I put little boxes. I'm like, okay, from 9 to 9:30 you're doing this. From 10 to 10:30 you're doing this. I'm doing this. And so I have like 2 calendars, like, or 2 pieces of paper that says what I'm doing and what she's doing. And then I'm like, okay, this is where my breaks are. This is where I'm going to, be able to help support you. This is where, we're going to do this. We're going to do lunch and, and so it's these, we strategize so that we can, and it's more for me, just keeping my sanity. Because it's like, okay, now we have this, right? So I think, laying out plan of action and, having those expectations, right? Having a clear, expectations of what's happening and, where things are going. And if you have that ability and you have, that other support system, it's always great to, tap into that support system. And as a family, really look at, my husband is an essential worker that is out of the off or out of the home. And so, he's not here. So in some ways I'm kind of the single mom, if you
Yeah.
will. And so I get it. Like I get it. Cause he's like kind of out of sight, out of mind. And not that he wouldn't, I mean, if I called him and said, hey, I really need you doing this, like he would, probably figure out a way, but it really, I mean, I know that card, I can only pull that card so often, right? That's really a crisis card, right? And so, so I understand that feeling of overwhelmed. So really quick, yeah, go ahead.
I also want to add to that too, is I think as parents and especially as mothers, we feel like our kids need to be entertained all of the time.
Yeah.
We need to be the ones doing that. And I want us to feel okay that it's good for our kids to entertain themselves. And my kids have learned how to play by themselves really, really well since we've been home for so long. Like they figured this out. Not that they don't fight with each other. They're both girls. They're close in age. They have their moments, but we work through it. But I think it's important to teach our kids how to entertain themselves.
Yeah.
And if all goes wrong, let them watch TV and it will be okay. And we will get through this.
We'll get through this. Well, this has been a delight. I will have to have you back on the show so that we can give some more, tips and tricks around this piece. Cause I feel like, as entrepreneurs, like overwhelm is just kind of part of the journey. And I want to say that it doesn't have to be the journey. It can be a part of it. And then we master it. And then it doesn't have to take over our lives. Right. We can create that. I'm not a huge fan of balance because I don't know that the balance is really in reality, but we can have better boundaries and we can find, a better happy medium, if you will, and create a little bit more harmony in our lives, by finding what that balance is for you in your life, right? Or you in your, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So let's we're going to put all your information down in the show notes. So take a look at that. So really quickly, where can they find you at?
So the name of my business is Home Most Simple, and you can find that homemostsimple.com. Same name on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And on any of those, you can join my newsletter or just learn more about me and how we can work together and help change your relationship with time.
I love it. Yes. Time is our most precious resource. So we got to protect it as much as we possibly can. So thank you, Valerie, for hopping on here today and just sharing your wisdom and inspiring all of us to, look at what our relationship is with time and follow her, connect with her. And thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.